Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, November 6, 2025. 2 days after the Democrats blow the Republicans out of the water in the off year elections in Virginia, New York City, and a few other places. So I have done my usual troll through the email inbox to find appropriate stories to talk about. And I want to talk about that election a little bit. But before we get to that, the house cleaning, don't forget we do not have a vid chat this Friday. Now, what happened was I had to schedule no vid chat because I was planning to have company and the company was planning to come. And then at the last minute told me they couldn't come because of the government shutdown and they didn't feel safe flying in the aircraft. And who can blame them, because you can fly and it might be safe, although according to the recent sad crash of the UPS plane in the McDonnell Douglas updated version of the DC-10 in Louisville, it was almost like a replay of that sad accident in the 1970s when the DC-10 taking off from O'Hare in Chicago lost the engine on its left wing during takeoff and plunged into the ground and killed everybody. So if you ask me, that's a plane that needs to be retired in all its versions, and the sooner the better. But anyway, the company canceled at the last minute, so I was not able to schedule much of a vid chat, and quite frankly I needed the time to kind of catch my breath and catch up. Now, turning to the election, we just saw, and I'm going to use very blunt words, we just saw the election of an Islamianist, let's call it what it is, to be the mayor of New York City. And during his acceptance speech, he told us that there's no problem too big for government to solve and no concern too small for it to be involved in. In other words, yeah, we're going to be true socialists and regulate you and monitor you to death. Now, I've heard all the pundits on the radio and television saying, well, he can't legally do half the stuff he wants to do. That's not the point. The point, at least for me, is what lesson's going to away from this, and my bet, my money, is on, we'll get to that. But I want to read you remarks that the Islamianist just recently gave, and it was reported by Jim Hoft. I want to quote Mondani himself and stir and mix this into your daily cup of hypocrisy, because this is a real deep draft of it. So here he is, quote, "Good morning, New York City. Thank you. Last night we made history, and today we begin the work of making a new administration. Welcome to the transition. This is the period over the next few months where we build a city hall that delivers on the promises of our campaign to make New York City affordable and to make government accountable to the people it serves. Over the last 100 years, folks, I think New York City may have had a Republican mayor for about 20 years, so you can eat all the problems of New York City yourselves to that other party of chaos. To make New York City affordable and to make government accountable to the people it serves. As we prepare to govern, we'll start announcing the leaders who will help implement our agenda. People like deputy mayors who oversee entire areas of government, and the commissioners who carry out the critical work of city agencies. These appointments will be driven by excellence, integrity, and a hunger to solve old problems with new solutions. We're talking to organizers on the front lines of the fight to improve our city, government veterans with proven track records. And my question is, proven track records at what? Graft, corruption, bribery, obfuscation, hypocrisy? Anyway, with proven track records, policy experts from around the country. So in other words, this is ruled by technocracy and the world, by the way, and working people who know better than anyone what our neighborhoods deserve. And this will be a period like the campaign we ran in the city hall to come, defined by transparency. Now, folks, we've heard every politician on both sides of the aisle for the last several years promising transparency, and the corruption gets worse and worse. So in other words, this is a promise for much more endemic corruption, as far as I'm concerned. Because New Yorkers deserve a government that they can trust. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that we all do. Okay. On January 1st, I will be your mayor. New Year's Day and a new era for this city. Oh, and one more thing. I love this, folks. I literally love this because this is it in a nutshell. One more thing. This is Mamdani. Remember how I told you a few months ago to stop sending us money? You can start again. This transition requires staff, research, and an infrastructure that can meet this moment. So, in other words, after getting all that money from Soros and Son, you didn't build the infrastructure, and now you want to go out and beg for money. And it will be made possible by the people who built and believe in this movement. So I hope you'll make a donation at transition2025.com. Now let's get to work. Unquote. So there you have it. The Islamunist, the self-proclaimed democratic socialist, is already out of money. And he hasn't even been sworn in. You know, the old quip by Margaret Thatcher was that socialism works just fine until you run out of other people's money. So, brace yourself. If you want to get soaked, we're asking you for a little extra donation to get soaked even more. Now, believe it or not, my ire here is not reserved nor even directed at the Democrats, because we know that party's leadership has gone completely off the rails and is utterly radicalized and nuts. Witness this guy. My ire is directed at the Republithugs, because you would assume, listening to all the reaction from the pundits and the radio talk shows, that this somehow was due to a lack of organization or low voter turn or poor messaging or whatever. And let me tell the Republican Party leadership, absolutely all of the above is true. It was a failure of messaging, because the people who voted you into power were not Republicans. They were independents. Just like the people who largely voted Mr. Mamdani, the Islamunist, into power, they were quite a few independents. Just like the people who voted in the new governor of Virginia into power, there were independents who voted them into office precisely because they stayed home. And no, this is not a lecture about getting out and voting. It's a shot across the bow to the Republican Party leadership and to Mr. Trump himself personally. Because the people stayed home because they thought, what's the use? We were promised no more forever wars, and what have we got? We've got an escalation of the neo-Nazi regime and the arms being promised to that regime in the Ukraine. We have no end to the war that the West itself started against Russia. We have seen an unprecedented genocide, and I have no other word for it, in Gaza, And I don't care where you stand on your support for Israel or not. Frankly, I support Israel and its right to exist, but genocide, no. We have an escalating situation and threats to go into Venezuela with military troops to fight the war on drugs. We have yet another indication of potential escalation into going into Nigeria to protect Christians. Now, I have to really wonder about that one. Were we all of a sudden worried about protection of Christians after beginning to lose that crucial evangelical support for our unrestrained, unquestioning support for Israel and all of its activities? I noticed that no one was paying attention to Nigeria, including the administration, until after the murder of Charlie Kirk and people began questioning the whole evangelo-Zionist movement. So if you want to know, Republicans, why you lost that election or didn't even have the showing you were expecting, it's because the independents, the so-called populist right that gave you power, stayed home. And a lot of them, by the way, are Democrats that quit voting Democrat or changed their party registration to independent. So get with the program. The failure to release the Epstein documents and on indicates that as far as many people in the MAGA base are concerned, it's not MAGA, it's MEGA. It's Make Israel Great Again, or MUGA, Make the Ukraine Great Again. So this is the reason I think we saw. I'm not surprised about New York. It's always been a mess. It's going to stay a mess. But for the rest of the country, we're stuck with whatever goofy policies that political party comes up with to inflict the financial outcome on the rest of us in the form of federal bailouts, because the Republicans don't fight for any principle. So we're left with our original strategy, a pox on both your houses. And you'll keep pushing and pushing this country to the brink. So that's my rant, my blow up for the day. I'm not surprised at the outcome one little bit. After watching forever war after forever war and military intervention after military intervention, I'm not the least surprised. But a warning to the Democrats: if you think those people are going to go away quietly and acquiesce to your neo-Marxist agenda, should you ever take federal power again, think again. We had an opportunity to clean things up, and it's been squandered. So that's it for my rant of the news and views from the Nefarium. Don't forget, we have no vid chat tomorrow. We will have a vid chat a week from tomorrow, but no vid chat tomorrow. And I also want to make an announcement. There is very likely going to be a change to some of the formatting in some of the vid chats after the first of the year. I'll be saying more about that in due course, probably after the first of the year. I've heard some feedback by some people, and I'm going to at least attempt to honor their wishes and their suggestions. But that will happen after the first of the year. That's it for today's news and views from the Nefarium. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye, and God bless.